Hello, hello, good morning.
Hi, John. Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm doing magical, thank you. And thank you for agreeing to sit down and talk a little bit about some portraits, talk a little,
Absolutely.
some
Yeah,
Idea Nugget
absolutely.
Incubator. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for getting it right. I mean, I wear this shirt for a reason, right? Now, before we get into some of the finer points of the work that we've done together, the amazing work that we've done together, why don't you tell everybody who you are, who you serve, and why you do what you do?
So I am Chinwe Esimai. I am a lawyer. I'm also an author, speaker, and I primarily serve immigrant women. So I am passionate about inspiring immigrant women to reach their full potential here in the US, but also women around the world really to understand and embrace and live their full potential. And why do I do it? I actually believe it's why I'm on this earth. I do it because I believe this is why when I do this work, it really truly lights me up to see other
Yeah.
people light up and to grow. And so I honestly believe it's why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the stuff that you've been posting recently, you can clearly see the passion and the belief in what you're saying. And it was evident when we first started talking because, I mean, I'm the same way about what I do behind the camera. And I love it unconditionally. I'd do it for free if I could. And
Okay.
it's something that when I work with people who have that kind of mindset as well, that's really how we make the magic, because there's a certain level of mutual respect for each other's
Yeah.
abilities within our given expertise.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that I'm a little rougher around the edges than you may be, uh, there is still a there's still a
There's
very
still that
strong,
magical
yeah,
connection, yes, and there has
yeah.
been from the beginning. Yes.
Yeah, so let's start from the beginning. Uh, we got on a phone call through a mutual connection, and I believe when we started talking, you immediately started to enjoy my particular way of communicating, and that was what sparked the whole thing.
Yes.
Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when we first had that conversation, what drew you in? What was that thing?
So I think what drew me in from the beginning, probably a sense of humor, because I remember we had that first call just talking about what I was looking for, what my needs were. And we probably spent about 15 minutes or half an hour just chatting about life in general and what we were
Yeah.
up to. And instantly I felt that connection. I felt that we could certainly work together because of the passion and because of the way you approached your work, right? So it's this combination of passion and also really creating this magical experience for your clients, understanding your clients and what their mission is and how you can serve them. So you really came from a place of service, a place of passion, but also a place of excellence where I knew that you were putting into your work really the highest. You were looking to put out work that was of the highest quality as well. So it was that combination. I think it's hard to even put a finger on one because I think there were so many.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, no, it obviously the conversation went well. but let's even backtrack a little bit further back. What necessitated that phone call in the first place?
Yes, so
Where were you? What were you
where
looking
I was at the time, I had just started building my online brand. So as I said earlier, I'm a lawyer, so I work at Citibank. I have this great executive job that I love, and I do great work traveling around the world. And I wrote a book on immigrant women. It's a leadership book. It's
Yeah.
inspiration for immigrant women. And I just started to build my online brand. And I had some portraits. I had a website and I had some portraits, but they were not, they didn't have enough variety and they weren't expressing quite what I was looking to express. And so as I started to think about being more active on social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram, and
Hmm.
to a lesser extent, Twitter, I wanted to have this collection of images that I could rely on to really tell a story. Because at the end of the day, what I was looking to do uh, beyond just building a brand was to create this movement and to tell a story. And being able to do that with pictures was really powerful.
You just mentioned a movement, and you mentioned the importance of image content with that. What is that relationship for you? What makes that work so well together?
Yeah, so I think when you're trying to tell a story, especially when you're trying to tell a story with people that you haven't met, because a lot of these people, when I'm building this online community and I'm trying to tell a story and I'm trying to inspire people, most of them have never met me in person. So it was very important that my images and my content, or just the words that I was putting on the page, because at the point I met you, I think I had probably 6 months to almost a year of blog content. So I was writing a lot. But I think what the pictures were able to help me do was bring those words to life, because then people felt as though they weren't just reading my words on the page, but when I punctuated those words with images, they could tell that it was almost as though they could see me doing it live. And so I think that's something you're able to do with pictures that you can't necessarily do with words alone.
Right. So it was the images that visually punctuated the sentiments of those stories that you wanted to share.
Correct.
Now, before we actually got you in front of the camera, we spent several hours working through a whole bunch of strategy and trying to unearth what you just said.
Yes.
Talk to me about let's start with the Idea Nugget Incubator Program first. Let's start with that work.
Okay.
Now, I think you know this, but you were actually the first person that I ever did that with.
Yes.
And I was scared and I was very vulnerable, but you were very gentle and you treated me like a grown-up, and it was lovely. But on your end of that particular video call that we had, where we went through the Idea Nugget workbook with the different sections and the different ideas that it generated.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the value that you felt within that particular piece of the pie.
Yeah, so and I don't know how many months we're jumping ahead now. Is it 6 months or 8 months? But we had done that portrait session, right? And we had also done, you had come and about a year ago, you'd come and taken pictures of me during an event. There was the event I had co-chaired, and you'd come and taken pictures. I think you were there for a couple of hours and you took hundreds of pictures. And
yes.
And at the point we spoke about the Idea Nugget Incubator, it was after a few months had passed, and you had said, I see you posting, but I don't see you posting as much as I would think you should be posting, considering how many amazing shots you had.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
because we did the first session, which was the portrait session, and we had tons of images, right? And we went through them as you always do. We sat down, went through them together. And
we'll go back to that.
We'll go back to that. But you knew I loved the shot. So you knew it wasn't that I ended up with all these images that I wasn't sure really did what I wanted them to do. It wasn't so much that I didn't love the content. It wasn't so much that I didn't love the pictures. It was that it was a combination. And that's part of what I like about the Idea Nugget Incubator, because you kind of get to the bottom of that. Why are you not using the picture? So you had the survey in advance where we talked about it, or you asked a lot of questions about who we want to serve, what drives you again, but it had a different focus. It wasn't quite like the same questions you asked at the point before we did the portrait session. And so coming into that session, I knew I needed help, in part because I think there's a combination of finding the time to post and also wanting the post to be authentic. So one of the things, and I think people are on social media for various reasons, right? But I think for those of us who are on social media to serve, we're there for a purpose. We're there because we believe it's a tool that can help us reach the people who care about our message the most, who can be helped the most by our message. For people who come to social media with that intention, sometimes social media can be overwhelming, right? So we look at what other people are doing and we say, that's not me, that's not authentic to me. So overcoming all of that and understanding how you can engage on social media in a way that's authentic and serves the purpose for which you originally decided to engage on social, I think that's, for me, was one of the biggest things that I got from the Idea Nugget Incubator was what are the kinds of things you can talk about that are authentic to you, but really still honor and respect and serve and promote why you're here on social media.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to promote ourselves, and we are out there for a very specific reason. But it's
Correct.
not just, hey, I'm going to make a living. I mean, yeah, it's real life. We do need to make a living, but
Absolutely.
there is this reciprocity of value that you offer when you put out those types of stories that help illuminate
Yes.
your personality, your expertise,
Yes.
your experiences in life, and how they relate, and also help empower those that you serve.
Exactly.
And when we went through all of that stuff in the Idea Nugget workbook, it really started to get those bells going off in your head.
Absolutely.
And what I saw in your work is that it went from being fairly narrow already, but being going to write this type of narrow. So from here to here, it wasn't all the way out here. It was here, and then we went to here. That's really what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the intention of it. Yeah, no, I'm glad that worked out. I mean, the whole reason why I created that thing in the first place was because I saw a client. I think I told you this. She was posting stock photos a week after we shot a portrait session, and it made me go ape shit is what it made me do. I'll just be honest. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, but it's good to see that there was value there, and it helped kind of narrow and focus you and give you a framework with which to create. Now, as you've gone on over the months, have you seen that refinement of the types of stories that you share even getting more narrow, and you're more quick to come up with content? Has it basically built the idea muscles in your brain to continuously go?
Yeah, so it has. So I think that's the most important thing, is it's created this framework, right? And just figuring out, because I'm clear on who I serve and why, right? Figuring out what type of content can serve that purpose, right? So yes, it's okay to share about health and fitness and mental wellness or whatever it is that helps promote and support me in being the person that I am. So some people would think, well, it's very impressive what you've done at Citigroup, and that's why we want to follow you. But it's beyond that. People really want to know what's happening behind the scenes. People want to know how I think. People want to know what my routine is. People want to know what lessons I've learned. So it's this whole, it's really being able to figure out that it's about telling a story. And then when you know you're telling a story, it becomes a question of, now how do you do that in a consistent fashion? How do you continually gather? So when you get the ideas, how do you record it, and how do you make sure that you're putting it out there? But I think the biggest thing for me was getting over the whole idea of, oh my gosh, what makes sense to post? What makes sense to post, and what should it look like? And so you were able to give a framework for that.
Yeah.
And I remember taking pages and pages of notes. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I sure do. That makes me happy when I see that. Because at the end of the last thing that you want is to look at your laptop, desktop every single morning, wave at the folder that has all these images in it, and then you do nothing with it for the rest of the day. It's like, that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your job to get out in front. It's your job to allow yourself to be discovered by those who need your help the most.
Correct.
Those immigrant women coming into this country, trying to understand how to make heads or tails of making a life here. Exactly. And to thrive as a human being while in this environment.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to get your message right, because otherwise those people are not going to find you, and they're going to be, God knows where, trying to figure out what to do. So that's important that you did that. Now, going back to before we shot the photos in the city, the pre-session strategy call. So the Idea Nugget was about 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes, going through all the different ideas that you wrote down and kind of brainstormed that. Now, before that, we had the other 2-hour phone call, which was the pre-session strategy call, where we kind of talked about all the little different things that make you so magical. And showing people how you work and what is, brainstorming ideas look like, and all of that different technology that you use to do the thing that you do
Yes.
best. So when we got on that phone and we started talking, and I was rifling off all of those questions, and we, were able to kind of figure out the shoot for the day, the types of shots that we needed, where we were going to shoot,
Yeah.
all the different props and accessories. How valuable did you find that experience
I
during
think
that?
it was very valuable because, well, first, I'd never done a photo shoot in that way, right? Where the person actually sat down in advance to strategize why I was doing it, what I needed to bring to the session, and what we would really create together. And so that was pretty powerful for me to begin with. The second thing going into that, well, I have to say, you did mention we were introduced through a mutual friend. And so Ted had already told me, look, yes, he works in a particular way, make sure you get to know him, all of this. And so it was easy. I already came into it with a massive amount of trust. So there was really zero distrust coming into it. I knew that you had the ability to deliver what I needed. So I was open to, when you said, yes, we need this, whether it's 90 minutes or whatever it was.
Or two, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
to go through and plan. And you might remember this as well. One of the surprises on that call, because I came into it thinking my lawyer speaker, my lawyer brand, and then the other brand as an author, trying to show a little bit of my creativity. But even as an immigrant woman, I didn't think, hey, I need to show the Nigerian side. And as you know, that's one of the most powerful things that came out of that, where you said, wait, I saw this picture of you. And I said, yes, it was for my brother's wedding. And you said, you have to bring a Nigerian outfit to the photo shoot. And I resisted, of course. I was like, what do you mean? I don't know. Is that necessary? Is that too much? Maybe not. And you said, trust me, you need to. And of course, we took a number of phenomenal shots, which even the day of, as we were taking the portraits, we got a lot of comments from people who were in the same space. And so I've used those portraits and those images, I would say significantly, as you've probably seen on social media. It's my profile picture on Instagram. And so, yes, it was very valuable. And that would not have happened if we didn't have the pre-session, because I did have in mind that I would have to show variety in my brand. So I knew I would bring suits, I knew I would bring dresses, I would bring a variety, but I didn't think I should bring a Nigerian outfit. And of course, it's a production, right? It's a scarf, is the whole outfit.
Yeah, I know. It took you quite a while, and you did not bring one. You brought more than one. But the reason why I stressed that and impressed upon you the need to have those is that who's your audience?
Immigrants.
And what are they going to respond to? Native attire, native outfits, native to your homeland. And it's a no-brainer now.
Now it's so obvious, yes. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how that works though? It's like, no. And then it's like, oh shit, of course. So I was going to not do this. What, are you kidding me?
Yes, that's right. You're right. I did bring a couple of them. I thought it was one, but it was actually
no, fashionista. You definitely brought more than one. I remember a purpley one, and then the big scarf one, and sitting and dancing and all that fun stuff. No, you brought more than one. But that's the point of it's again showing, another aspect of who you are. Because listen, we are not in the when we create these types of images, this type of image content portfolio that you're going to use in a way to get the message out there and create that visibility and visually punctuate those stories. It's important that you have that diversity across all of it, because you now become that much more relatable to people when you are in that kind of an outfit. And again, it's not about the fashion of it. It's about the value, and it's about the connection that people will have.
It's the fashion and the value.
well, I was just gonna say, I know. You're very, very. Listen, this is my uniform. I wear a uniform. This is how I roll. You know that. But as far as you're concerned, yes, fashion is the piece for you. But for your audience, you're putting it on not just to trot it out. You're putting it also, it's vanity.
I think that's
value.
Important. That goes to the point I made earlier about a lot of people, especially thought leaders, speakers, people who are on social to serve, right? And if you it's easy to see that there are people who are on there, again, and I think to put it in the simplest of terms, for vanity, look at me, I'm awesome, which is very different from I'm here to serve you, and this is me showing you more of me so that it draws you in, and so we can create something beautiful together. Completely different purposes and completely different outcomes.
Yeah, but also at the end of the day, listen, we're not going to escape the fact that you want to look good in these photos, and there is nothing wrong with that. We want you to look confident and powerful and illustrate the things that mean something to you, and this happens to have a multi-level purpose to it. Correct. The way that you present yourself in your outfits.
Correct.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Correct.
As long as you're just not, trotting yourself in front of a Ferrari or a Gulfstream on a tarmac and looking all fancy and let me show you how to 10x your business. Like, that's not your jam. As long as you're not doing that, then you're being honest with yourself, and you're presenting yourself in an authentic to you type of way. And that's what we're trying to achieve with these portraits.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, speaking of these portraits, have you been using these things?
So I've been using them everywhere. I started with using them on social media, my Facebook page and my Instagram page and Twitter, and also on my website. So as I said, I was blogging already. So I was punctuating each of them with these portraits and these images, and always looking for the image that would tell the story the best, right? So if the post was about habits or about routines, making sure the image reflected that. If it was about being confident, making sure it was a portrait that showed confidence. And so I think, but also knowing that I had the variety and sort of this diversity of images, hundreds of images literally, that I could pick from was phenomenal. And so that was social. But I've also used it for some of the PR work that my team has been doing. So we've been reaching out, because I wrote a book and we're building the platform for the book. So we've been reaching out for interviews. Whenever I'm interviewed, I recently was featured in Thrive Global and Medium. So it was an interview with C-suite moms, and I was talking about being a mom, and I used the images from our session, right? So just knowing that whenever I'm either called upon for an interview, called upon for a speaking engagement, or anything else, whether it's a magazine, in print or online, and just knowing that I have the confidence that I have high quality images that can appropriately present me and my brand without ever having to worry about that, knowing that I have those and that I can always pull those up, I think has been I would say, invaluable piece over the last several months, just having that available, readily available. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does make a difference when you send a lifestyle portrait photo versus a selfie. I want to
or any cell phone pictures, right? Like it can be, even if it's not a selfie, but if it's an image from us, it's just not the same.
No,
not the same.
Now, you mentioned something before about matching the image with the words and talking about the right image. What does that mean?
So, well, first, I think that's another product of the brainstorming session we did in advance, because you asked me questions like, who are you serving? What do you do? How do you do it? Where do you work? So when I started to tell the story around what my processes are and what I care about, the images, because you went into the session thinking, okay, these are the kinds of things we need to create out of these sessions. And so when I went back and started telling stories, I had the images to support that, because you knew what to look for, right? So if I talk about, for example, being able to work anywhere, and you'd ask me about, whether I work on my laptop, etc., I can now punctuate those posts with pictures of me working on my laptop. Or when you talked about, well, what do you do? I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of speaking. Now I have all these images, for example, from the event that you shot live, but also the ones we did in the branded portrait session, because you're really good at simulating.
We faked it, yeah.
So we have a few of me speaking or me expressing that, again, we're able to visually punctuate the blog post. And that's not something I was able to do before a portrait session, because I just did not have, I had portraits where I was and you know, obviously the photographer, and they were professionally taken, right? Did a great job, but I think he had a different lens in terms of what I was looking for. You obviously, because of your expertise serving speakers and authors and thought leaders, you knew what kinds of things I needed to come out of that session with. And so it wasn't just images of me standing with a beautiful, gorgeous background with the mountains behind me. I now had all of these, real true story. I'm not making that
I like
up.
to do that too, you know. I mean, it's
not making that up.
Yeah.
So it's but now I had all of these images that told a story, that supported thought leadership, that supported my speaking, that supported my blogging, that it was really very targeted to what I needed to do.
Yeah. Now, part of those images is not just the different lifestyle scenarios in which you're in, the working shots, the speaking shots, the on the phone shots, the on the computer shots, but it's the expression on your face.
Mm-hmm.
That's the portal for people to come into the image, and we have quite a range of expressions. Talk about how the expressions in all the images help you to really zone in on the right types of images to visually punctuate the different things that you're trying to achieve in your content and your promotional materials.
Yeah, so as we discussed, I think a little bit earlier, is I think having the images and tell a story, especially because I'm building these relationships online, and some of these people have never met me. I think it gives them the ability to feel like they in my presence, as opposed to they're reading from me or listening to me. They can actually see it. And so if there was, for example, a blog post about self-reflection, I had images where I was being reflective, right? And so I'm able to express that to people in an authentic way, as opposed to, well, here are the things, you know, here's a quote about being reflective, etc. The visual, I think, really makes it real. And as you said, it really draws people in, because then they feel as though they know you and they're experiencing you. They're experiencing your personality. And I think that was also something you did a great job of, because when we're taking portraits, it's not just, okay, just stand. You're not instructing. You were also eliciting emotion during the session, right? Whether it's through humor or through asking questions, I think you were able to really draw out that variety of emotions. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's how the sausage is made right there. You know, it's all about
That's where the magic is.
Yeah, that's right. You got to keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
But that is the thing. It's a dance between the technical aspects, the lighting, the composition, the type of lens I'm using, and then the location where you're sitting, and then with the technical, it marries to the emotional. It's the expression, and it's the rapport between us that creates that type of expression.
Yes. And if we didn't have that rapport built in advance, right? I mean, I think we could have certainly created it at the session, but I think it was even better because we had already built it prior to the session as well.
Yeah, and that's a real key to it all, because if you're not comfortable with the person behind the camera, how the hell are you supposed to be comfortable in front of it? And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really take into account when they're thinking about portraits. It's like, oh, I'm looking at the portfolio, I'm looking at the price tag. That's all I care about. It's a transaction, it's a commodity, it's all it is. But when it comes to the type of stuff that we do, it's more based on relationship. It's more based on that rapport, and it's super important. And you now understand why going through that process.
Yeah.
Now, but before we actually I talked to you about the process and what's going to happen. Before we actually started the session, did you have any apprehensions to what we were about to go into?
I would say the initial apprehension was around, and you mentioned price tag, so maybe there was a little bit of apprehension there because I hadn't paid that much for portraits. And I love that you were very completely transparent on your website, so it wasn't like a mystery walking into this mysterious setup. But so because I hadn't paid that much, but I also realized I'd never gotten that much value. So it's an investment. It's about whether or not something serves the purposes. And once I spoke to you, I think the apprehension was beforehand, not before we spoke. I think once we spoke, I had this confidence that you could deliver, and maybe even over deliver. And I would say over deliver in terms of the value that you create for your clients because of the passion that you put into it and the quality of work.
Yeah. Were there any apprehensions with respect to how you were going to leverage these images? Were you feeling over, I mean, you talked a little bit before about overwhelm in a general sense, but were you feeling that yourself, like throughout, before we actually started to get to work on all the ways we were going to use these images?
So before, you mean before the portrait session or before the Idea Nugget Incubator? You can't hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I meant before we actually started talking.
Did I have any amount of overwhelm about how to use the images or about the whole?
About the fact that you were going to partake in a process that would involve you to consistently create content day after day for months on end. Yeah.
Yes. So I definitely found that overwhelming, both because of my schedule in terms of time, right? Having a very busy schedule. I have 3 kids. I have a very demanding job. So I definitely felt a sense of overwhelm around this whole idea of creating images and content and messaging for social media or just for online in general.
Right. And then once we spoke, it kind of...
It started to get better because I could see, but then after the session, a few months after, there was still that overwhelm because I didn't have the framework to create a consistent and authentic message. And so that was definitely helpful to me to get that later. Because when I got all of these images, it was overwhelming to some degree because now I had it and I had that, there was some comfort in knowing that I had all these images there. But then there was a bit of the tension around, well, now you got to use them. So that created some tension for sure. Yeah.
So the Idea Nugget piece actually was at the right time. Usually
critical. Yes, it was very important. Yes.
Yeah, because usually I do those before. Well, now, I mean, like I said, you were number one.
I feel
you
so
feel
honored.
good. You should feel special. You're number one. There you go. But
I am special. Yes. Makes sense. Makes total sense.
Yeah, we already knew that. Yeah, but it's good to see that it actually, for you, even though it was months after when it normally happens, it actually was at the right time for you.
It was.
And that's so. With respect to social, how are you leveraging these images? I noticed that you're doing a lot of quote posts. You're creating.
Yeah, so I do quote posts, which is, again, there was some learning curve there as well, coming up with a structure and a process that I understood and that was consistent. And that was one of the other things around the incubator that you shared, which is don't go crazy doing something different all the time. Be consistent, pick a format and just stick with it. So I did. I was able to create that. And so whenever I post a quote, it has a particular look, right, and feel. And I've gotten a lot of feedback about that as well. People just instantly, once I started posting the quotes, people were like, this is amazing. I absolutely love the look and the quality and content that you're putting out. And so that's one way I use it. The other way I think I mentioned with my blog post. So when I have a new blog post, I use the images, right, to punctuate when I post on social. So sometimes the images will have quotes on them, sometimes they won't. And I actually remember the first week after our session, I was posting only quotes because I had all this blog content that I hadn't used to share the images. And so you said, remember, so I was putting quotes from the blog, but then you said, remember, you can post the images just by themselves too, it's fine. And so I started to do that. And sometimes it's still challenging because I'm learning, right, how to use some of these. I think Canva updated their app, recently, and that threw me off because I had an image. You remember that one I posted and you said, hey, what happened here? And I said, I was really struggling on that one, really struggling. But I think part of it is it's a journey. It's a learning process, right? And that's part of the reason I think a lot of times we don't embark on it. We would say, like I always used to say, I'm not very technical. I'm not good at, pictures and apps and editing pictures. And all of that were just limitations I put on myself, because now after you gave the framework and I started to think, well, I should just dedicate time to figure this out. Now, some of these things, and I think a lot of thought leaders probably struggle with this, some of this you can delegate, and I do delegate a lot of things, but there are instances where you also need to be able to be spontaneous with your content, be able to just go into the folder and post something that really speaks to where you are, or really will resonate with your audience. And I think being able to have the power to be spontaneous, I think is critical, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to someone who has content scheduled in one way, shape, or form until October. So it's like 5 months.
I love that. So that's the next level. I don't know if we talked about, but that's the next level for me. I need to really start scheduling out my content, because I know that will free me up quite a bit, right? To use one of those apps to schedule them out. And because I think that would help me a lot.
Well, here's the thing about that. What scheduling your content will give you is this, what I refer to as structured fluidity, meaning you'll have the structure of 3-4 days a week, 5 days, whatever you post now, you know, and then when you want to freestyle, you can freestyle whenever you want because you're covered.
Yes.
A consistent amount of time.
Exactly what I'm going to do. Yes.
And then the next step is once you start booking out months and months and months in advance and you write new stuff, what's going to end up happening is this stuff that I just wrote right now is fresh. Some of this stuff is evergreen and I can just move and shake it around and it's no big deal. Right. Put the stuff that's fresh and new that you really like, that maybe you're selling something, maybe you're doing extra promotion for the book, maybe you're promoting a talk, whatever the case may be, move that stuff up and you move the stuff that was there out months ahead.
Yeah.
So that's when it starts to get real fun.
It does. Yes.
So you can look forward to that. Now, I mean, obviously you've been posting this stuff for you know, over a year, and you've been doing a lot of different things. What doors have been opened as a direct result of these images married to this content, married to your online presence being bolstered and enhanced through the work that you've been putting into it?
So I think one piece, which I already mentioned, is around having the ability and also having the images and the confidence whenever I did have opportunities come up, whether it's speaking, writing, etc., knowing that I had the images to support that, right? So that was one. But I also think that it's been able to, even when someone needed to reach out, or if someone wanted me to be a part of their process, whether it's a speaking engagement, they don't always have to come to me, because there's so much content online that people are sharing, right? Whether it's from my Instagram or my Facebook, that's consistent and authentic, and I know I created and put out there intentionally, that they can leverage, right? So people have been able to leverage it to say, here's someone that would be a great speaker, and then I hear about it later, right? So I think it's really created it's kind of going out ahead of me, right? So not just supporting the things that I'm proactively doing, but when someone else wants to put out, because I've had people reach out to me, either forward a picture. So this happened not too long ago. Someone I knew from middle school in Nigeria, who now lives in Minneapolis, she had one of my pictures forwarded to her. So she forwards the picture and the blog content to me saying, oh my gosh, X person, a friend of mine forwarded this to me, and it's amazing to know what you're doing. It's wonderful, blah, blah, blah. I've been so inspired by the work. So it becomes this vehicle that people can use to share the message, right? And then it also becomes, if we think of it more from a business/professional, when people want to promote your message, right, and reach out to you for speaking opportunities, there's already this built, this portfolio of content and images that they can leverage. Yeah.
So first of all, that's awesome. And you're now the second person that's told me that someone has reached out to them because of a post with one of the images that I created with them.
Yes.
You're creating community. You're creating a community of advocates and referral partners, cheerleaders for your work, supporters, and people who need your help.
Yes.
Has your community been growing?
So before I started actively creating this content, On Instagram, I'll use Instagram as an example. I probably had about 200 followers. Now I have over 5,000.
Yeah.
So it's really given me this ability to tell a story in a consistent manner. So there's this ongoing flow, right? And it makes it easier. I think the thing about images is when you punctuate a story with images, I think it tells a more powerful story. It's one thing to just share words, and it's something else to say, well, look at this person, look who they are, look what they're doing. And I think that immediately creates a following for people that the message resonates with. So if it resonates with people, they see you, they love what you're doing, then you're automatically creating that community without being, I think without feeling like you have to not be authentic or being needy about it, but you're able to do this just through the message. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the best part about it is at no point are you putting on a show. You're just being yourself. And
exactly.
It qualifies in people and it qualifies out people. And both reasons are great.
Both are great. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's good to hear. So the community's growing, the engagement is increasing. And ultimately, you're able to get yourself out front to help those people that you serve. And that's pretty amazing because the people that you serve are you. And that's what really makes that a really special thing. That's really why I appreciate when you first told me what your book was about and what you do. It's like, that is pretty awesome, you know?
Thank you.
Because there's a lot of people in this world that could give less of a shit about the people that remind them of themselves, like where they come from. They don't want to, they're detached and they just have to, and you actually lean in on it and you're doubling.
That's the biggest thing about my message, right? It's, embrace all of that, integrate it, and embrace the uniqueness. And I think a lot of people run from that. They want to change their names. They want to change their accent. And it's great to adapt and adjust to the US. But if that comes at the cost of denying who you are and where you came from, or dissociating, right? And this could apply to so many other things, right? Dissociating with a side of you, I think ultimately that's somehow going to lead to suffering because it doesn't feel authentic, right? Now, when you integrate all of it and you can figure out how much you want to put out or dial in or dial back, but never denial. It's never a point of denial. It's a point of embracing and loving every part of yourself and then using that to serve. And and that's been true for me in my professional life, but I've also seen it help other people because when they realize that, when they really recognize that part and say, well, yeah, maybe I changed my name because of something that was going on with me. It's not that people couldn't love me with my foreign name. It's just that I had something going on with me that I need to then address.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty magical thing you do. And I appreciate it, and I'm excited to see the growth. I love seeing what you share. You write awesome stuff. It comes from the heart, but it's also very, very, very experience driven, and it's not just do your best.
Right.
What I call fortune cookie wisdom.
We can't. There's enough of that in the world. We need real that can really help people. Things that can be practical, that people can apply right away. And that's always been, that's what's driven me. So my blog posts, I make sure it's not, yes, I want to inspire you, but I need to inspire you to action. And if you don't get actionable tips out of those blog posts, then I really failed.
Yeah. I mean, and you're also doing it in your social too, and you're allowing people the opportunity to discover it with the images, and you're doing a fantastical job. And I really look forward to seeing where this whole thing goes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me about this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. And thank you for the awesome work you do. It's really amazing. It's pretty magical. And I know that, it comes from a place of passion, but also excellence. And I think that combination is magical.
Thank you. Yes, it is. And as long as I can keep working with people like you, I'll be still in business doing the thing. All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, John.